Welcome to Garden Wise Adventures. My name is Malie, and today is the 5th video in my Beginning Gardener series, and today we're going to talk a little bit about access. Now you're probably thinking, access, what do you mean by access, and why do I need to know that? Well, access can be one of the more important things about your garden. Now, when gardening, especially in the first few years when you're learning everything, you want to make things as easy as possible. When you start making things more difficult, it starts becoming less of a pleasure and more of a chore. And that's where access can play a big part. So let's go look over my garden and talk a little bit about access. So here we are on my deck, and here's an overview of my garden. We have my food forest down here, which used to be a lawn. I had to keep it a lawn when I had my kids and my dogs because they used it a lot. Once my kids and dogs were gone, I converted it into a more garden area because it is one of the easiest access for me. Just go down the steps of my deck and there I am to my garden. So this is easy access. The next place I had was the first place I put my garden. It was the best place to put a garden for sun, and it was an open area. So that was a good area for a garden. But access was going to be a little bit difficult. So let's go look at it and talk a little bit about what we had to do to think about access on my slope. Now, the first thing that I did when I built this property was to build fences around it to contain my dogs and my kids and to keep other animals out when I built my gardens. So fences are really important if you want to contain things or keep other things out. But when you build fences, you need to consider your access. So what I had them do is build a 4-foot wide gate. If you build your gates too narrow, you're not going to be able to get equipment in that you need to get in. The next thing that I did was I had them built a wide access gate. So this is I think it's a 10-foot wide gate that swings open towards my front yard. And that was so that I could get big equipment in here. That really helped when I was building my food forest and when I would bring in wood chips for up on the top area. So now I have my food forest here, and I'm really going to have to think about how I can use this gate because now I can't drive big trucks all the way through the back of my property. But I think at this point in my property, I really don't need to do that. But it opens forward towards my front, and I made sure there was clearance to fully open this gate in my front yard. The only issue is I've cut my access off with plants over there for large trucks. So it's not as important that at this point in my landscape to have that much access, but you need to think about what kind of equipment you're going to be driving in, and are you going to be destroying parts of your landscape to get that equipment in there. Now, to get up into my garden beds, I did not leave large paths, but this has worked out fine because a wheelbarrow fits perfectly up here and it's easy to get up onto this path. So I had to think about wheelbarrow access. I could have done this better, but it actually works for me. And then I did leave 3 to 4 feet between each bed. This is so that I could get wheelbarrows in there and have room to work. It is vitally important to leave room in between your beds to be able to work, especially if you need to bring in large amounts of soil. This path right here is a path that's just barely wide enough for my wheelbarrow. It's worked for me for the 15 years that I've been here. And so this path has been great. The only thing that I need to watch is you can see that the juniper hedge and the rosemary, you know, they continuously grow, and I always need to cut those back so that I can keep my access up to the top and where my compost bins are. Another thing to think about is any equipment that you bring in, you're going to have to be able to get out. If you can back it straight out, that's fine, but it's also nice to leave areas where you can turn things around. Like with my wheelbarrows, I can pull them in here, shovel in or shovel out any of the dirt or soil that I need, can back them out to here, and then turn them around. So access is very important. Definitely give yourself enough room to be able to work. Now, when I built my food forest, I knew that I was going to have mulch all over this area. Under the snow here is a heavy layer of mulch, which makes it a little more difficult to get heavy wheelbarrows through. So I decided to make a path. This is a chat path. It's very heavily compacted. It's not solid like concrete or flagstone, but it makes a really excellent access path to get to and from the gate without getting muddy. I also made sure to leave a little bit of an open area through here, and when I prune my trees I'm going to have to think about it also, but I need an area to get wheelbarrows through to the garden beds. Now maybe these plants are going to end up being too close and I'm going to have to heavily prune them so that I can actually get through there, but that's a problem I'm willing to face to be able to have fruit trees here. Now another thing we need to think about when it comes to access is denying access to the undesirables. Now kids, neighbors, animals, rodents, they can be desirable in certain times. Well, maybe not the rodents, but the kids and the neighbors are definitely desirable in the right conditions. But you need to think about how to deny access to those that you don't want in your garden space. If you have dogs, maybe you need to deny access to the dogs. You need to definitely deny access to the rodents. You need to, if neighbors are going to come pick your produce and you don't want them to touch it, or kids, you may need to build a fence around your area. So you need to think of ways to exclude what you don't want in your garden. So that is a very important thing to do. I'm just starting to figure out. One of the big issues in our area is deer. We have the mountains right behind us, and the deer love to visit our yards and eat the vegetables. So you need to be able to figure out a way to keep out those that you don't want in your garden that are going to cause more harm than good. Now there's one last thing that I wanted to talk about, and I'm going to have to pull up past video footage for that, and that's irrigation access. You need access to irrigation. So let's look at some of the past videos that I've done and talk about what you need to think about when it comes to access to irrigation. Now I'm going to use clips from an old video I made about my irrigation system to kind of show you why irrigation access is important to planting your garden beds. Now there are different components to irrigation beds, and the first thing you need to know is there are drip irrigation valves. These valves have filters and pressure regulators that help protect your system from blowing out from too high a pressure. These are different than your sprinkler head valves, which look like this. These are sprinkler head valves, and they do not have pressure regulators and they do not have filters. So if you connected up your drip irrigation to a regular valve, you would end up blowing out your drip irrigation lines. Now your valves are connected to a clock, and this is where my irrigation lines are connected to my clock. These are the electrical lines that go into my house because my clock is actually located in my house. It's really hard to add another valve if you have to run electric lines under pavement, for example, a driveway if your irrigation is in the garage. So it's important to look and know where the electrical is to your clock. Now this is my clock. This is what an irrigation clock looks like. And it has a set number of valves that can be added to it. So look at your clock, and if you don't have drip lines for your garden beds, see if there's an empty station available that you can add those lines to. If not, see if there's a way to run more lines to your clock or change out your clock so that you can have automatic irrigation, because automatic irrigation really, really helps when watering your garden. Now, if you want to convert a regular spray head irrigation valve into a drip irrigation valve, that is easy. So I switched the valve out to a drip valve, attached irrigation pipe to one of my spray heads, and then capped off the rest. And this is where we added our new drip lines to the garden beds into the food forest. So these two black pipes are connected to a PVC pipe, and this is for my food forest. And then these two pipes right here are connected to my garden beds. So my gardens are on their own drip valve. The one down here that you can see is connected to my lower gardens, and then there's one that's buried up on the top right that goes to my top gardens. So I ran a drip line all the way down to this point and put in my drip irrigation for my garden beds. Now, if you're not able to connect your garden beds to your automatic drip irrigation system, you can actually connect them to a hose. And I wanted to show you a little bit about how I connected this garden bed to this hose bib. So I went to Home Depot and I got all the parts. I also got a pressure regulator at Sprinkler World. And the parts are actually pretty easy to find. Definitely go to your irrigation store and ask for these different parts. I got the clock and the bottom pressure regulator from Sprinkler World and the rest from Home Depot. Now, I did use a splitter because I wanted to use my hose with my drip irrigation system. You can turn the hose off with this valve. and it's pretty easy. And then you can also have the drip irrigation system stay on permanently. Now I actually love the clock that I got here. It's a beehive clock, and my automatic irrigation system is also on a beehive clock. So I can use the same app that I have on my phone for my automatic system with this system. So it automatically, turns the irrigation on at set times. This is attached to this is the pressure regulator. That is very important. That helps protect your drip hoses. And then on the bottom is a filter. The filter is very important in my area because this is on secondary irrigation. Secondary irrigation is not filtered as much as culinary water, and you can actually unscrew that cap and clean out the filter if needed. Now this hose is connected through the fence to the garden bed. I dug a trench and ran it under my garden bed and under the weed mat to protect it, and then up into the garden bed. And then I just connected all the drip irrigation to that. So it's actually a really, really simple build. Now, having your beds connected to drip irrigation is really, really important. If you try to hand water your beds, it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of energy, and then you're going to be tied to your garden beds. If you get sick for a week, all of your hard work could end up dying. If you need to go on vacation, are you actually going to be able to find somebody who waters your garden beds the same way you would? So if there's any way possible for you to get your garden beds attached to an automatic drip system, either through the hose or through your automatic system, that will really, really help you and increase your success. So when you're planning your garden, make sure you think about access. Make sure you have enough access so that you can work easily in your garden. Make sure that your garden is in an area where it's easy to get to, and try and exclude the things that you don't want in your garden. Also make sure that you have placed it in an area where you have easy access to irrigation. So I hope this video has been helpful to you. If it has been helpful, please like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and go have a wonderful garden adventure.